The last couple of days I had like loads of fun playing with the JSON formatting on Microsoft lists. So you might know that recently, I'm saying recently, oh my word, you can now create Microsoft lists from template inside of Microsoft Teams. But I actually want to go to the SharePoint side. I just want to show you what it looks like. I want to go to the SharePoint side and just show you that even from creating it from a SharePoint list, you can still do some pretty cool things on those lists when it comes to formatting. So let's take a look. This specific list that I've created, so let's go to this one first, Get to Know Me. This is a list that I created by adding a custom list on SharePoint. So let's just do that and I can show you what it looks like. So if I on SharePoint go create custom list, I'm going to just call this custom list for now. And I'll just show you how that list then when it's created is a blank list. And I can, of course, I can add columns straight from here. I'm still, I like going to the list settings so I can see my views and things as well. So you can go to the list settings and then actually look at adding columns. There you can see all the columns and there is create column. There's quite a lot of columns that you can add from here. So if you should create a list from here and then use that to capture data, then from the SharePoint side, it normally brings it in a single column. In this example, you'll see, so there's my Get to Know Me list, and there's the different items that I added, or the columns, and it actually just brings it in a single column. But in this one, you can see that my formatting looks completely different. So look at that. I've got an icon. I've made the title stand out. I've got little sections on it as well. So let's just take a look at what it looked like before. So there you can see it was a single like list of fields that you could enter your data in, or columns, and now it actually looks completely different. So the same rules apply on whether it's a Microsoft list that you created from the team side or whether it is a custom list that you created on SharePoint. The formatting works exactly the same. So let's take a look at how that works. And before I get started, I always want to share some resources with you first. My focus is not creating content for developers. It's actually for citizen developers. So that's for newbies that's getting started with us, that might not have all the background necessary to get playing with us, but you are playing with us. So let's always supply as many resources as we can. So the first resource I do want to bring your attention to, if you are new to SharePoint, I definitely suggest going to the SharePoint adoption site. There's so many great resources on here. Even if I go to training, you'll see that there's all the training there that you could require for SharePoint. And then also the Microsoft Lists adoption site. Incredible resources. Again, if you go to train, there's some great resources there to show you how to get started with this. And then also, of course, today, as we'll be looking at configuring the list item. So the resource that I do want to share with you would be on docs.microsoft.com, and it's configure the list form. Okay, that's under SharePoint, so configure the list form. And on this list form, it explains all the steps that I am going to be covering with you now. And then also, very importantly, another resource that I am going to look at in this video would be the icons that I use in the JSON that I add. So again, it's on developer.microsoft.com, and it's the Fluent UI icons that you can reference inside of the JSON. So that's definitely a good one. And then also, if you're new to JSON, great article by Bob German, and it's Introduction to JSON. This was posted on the tech community. Again, I'll share that resource with you. You can see it there at the top. So also a great article that just explains, if you're getting started with JSON, just explains how everything works. And then I also, on the community side, found a great article on Colab 365 that also gives great resources. So SharePoint Modern View Formatting with JSON. And it really, they've gone out of their way to really share all the basics around JSON and how it works and how it structures the content, or how it constructs it. So I do think that this would be a very valuable article for you as well. I just wanted to take a quick look if I can see the author at the bottom. Let's see, there we go. Jamie Bray published this article, and it was under Colab 365. and this is the article, a really great article for you to get started. So okay, so to get started with this, what you have to understand is that that form that gets filled in has 3 sections. The one is the header, the one is the body, and the one is the footer. So this is the header, this is the body, and this is the footer, that little section that you can see there. So how do I get started with editing this form that I use to fill it in? So if I had to go to this blank one that I've just created, just to give an example, when I click on new, you'll see that there's a button here on the right hand side, configure layout. And when you go to configure layout, you'll then see that you've got a header, a body, and a footer. And this is where I'll add that JSON. So this is absolutely, we can add it. And that applies that formatting on this item for me. So let's take a look. And then what I've done, if you're new to it, there's a couple of things that I want to bring your attention to. But I've also copied the code or the JSON, and I've loaded it to my GitHub for you, which will make it easier for you to download and just modify. So if I look at this specific form, I'm going to go configure layout. You'll see there's the JSON that I've added for my header. There's the JSON for my footer, for my body, and there's the JSON for my footer. I use Notepad++. That really just makes it easier for me to use the code. So to go back to that resource that I've shared with you, let me just find this, and I just want to take this into this form as well. One moment. Okay, so if I go back to that article that explains to you the configure list form, you'll see that it tells you here to configure a header, and it actually gives you the code as well. And there's specific areas that you have to modify, and then there's the footer with a code, and then of course there's the body with a code as well, which I am going to be talking through to now. So in my Notepad++, and the reason why I use Notepad++, because I mean, of course you can just put this in Word if you wanted to, is that when I click on any of my brackets, I can actually see my corresponding brackets, and that's one thing you have to know about these things. If all the brackets aren't there, and all the commas and all the whatevers that you have to use, then something's not going to work. So for me, who's not a developer, this really helps me to understand where my opening and close sections are and what my little sections are comprised of. So if I click there, I can see that this whole section there is actually defining a specific piece, and this section there defines a specific piece. So that's quite important for me to also take note of. Now, the code for the header, I don't even know what half of those things mean, okay? So let's not go into that today. I'll figure out some more as I go on. But in this code, what I wanted to tell you, so if you copy this code, there's only 2 things that you need to modify just to get started, okay? It's only 2 things that you have to modify. And the first one is, and I just need to find it, and that's what's nice about Notepad++ as well, is I can go Control-A, Control-F. I am going to look for icon. You'll see here's my search bar. I just want to find where it references the icon. There we go. So the first thing that you have to add is the icon, and there it is, the code. So you've got to replace this icon name in the JSON that I'm going to give you with the icon that you want to use. And that icon that you want to use, of course, I got from this Home Fluent UI, the icon. So if you just hover over it, that's the text that you have to put into between those 2 quotes. Okay, so that's rather easy, is that you have to add that specific. So look for this in the JSON, and that's the icon name you have to replace with the icon that you'd like to use. So apart from the icon name, the second thing that you have to bring in is the name that you want to appear at the top, and there you can see I've highlighted it at the bottom. Text content list name is what you have to replace, and that's what you call it on the card, and that's what gives you this name and the icon. So that's your header firstly, and as mentioned, I've loaded this on my GitHub, so you can download it from there and then just modify. So first thing you have to modify on the header is the icon name. So go find the icon in that resource. So just to confirm that resource again, this would be Fluent UI icons, and it's on developer.microsoft.com, and that's where you can find the reference to the icon that you want to use. And then the second thing that you have to change on the header is the name that you want to appear there, and that's that part of the JSON that you have to replace. So that will then give me that section of my form, which is pretty cool. You can bring an icon in, and you can also put the name in there that you wanted to show. So then the next part would be the body of the, or let's do the footer first because that might be easier. So let's go confirm and let's go to the footer. So what I added on the footer is just a little extra resource. So click here to visit my blog or read the CI manual here or anything like that, for example. And again, for the form footer, again, I've shared that and I'll share the resource with you now. This is for the form footer. And the most important part here that you have to modify will only be this text content. So click here to visit my blog. And then that's where you add the URL. That's the URL that I put in. So you can add text notes there. I can have a URL reference. So that's quite a cool thing that you can do on the footer as well. Or click here to read more about this process. Or click here to contact someone. So you can put a mail to a reference in as well, which is quite cool. So start with the basics and just start with maybe a reference and a click through to another site or a resource. And then the last one that we are going to be looking at is the body of this. So what I wanted is that I wanted to change it into sections. Now this is quite easy. I changed about me and dislikes and likes. And what I am going to do is to show you on the other form what I did. So on this content scheduler, I did a bit more. So there you can see I've got more sections there. So I brought in content overview, I brought in responsibilities, I brought in publish details, and it then groups those areas together. So let's take a look at the body of that. So configure layout. If I go to the body of that, okay, so here is the code, and I've given you the clean code that you can go and modify. So if the JSON, if I look at the body, you'll see that it's quite simple until you start adding your stuff. So to define the sections, there's my section 1, and there's the columns that I'm referencing. So that would be the columns in my list, okay, so in the list that you've added, the columns that you've added. So if I look at that, there's column 1, column 2, then there's my next section, there's column 3, 4, 5, there's my next section, there's column 6, 7, 8. What is important for me to show you here, for you to understand if you're not used to working with this, you'll see that after each section, so there's my first section, second section, third section, and you'll see that in the columns, you'll see that if I've got 2 columns in the first section, I've got a comma after the first section, the column reference, and then not after the last one. Then I've got commas there again and not after the last one, and then commas there again and not after the last one. So that's quite good to understand, is that the commas are only used to actually show that there's another line item coming in or another column, and if it's the last one, then the comma doesn't exist anymore. So this would be the code that you would use. I just want to check something else. So that's the easy part of that. Again, this is the clean JSON that I'll be sharing with you that you can then modify for your sections, that you can modify for your header as well. So by putting the icon in and the list name, and then also for your footer. What is important, in case you didn't know, this target equals blank. What that does is that when someone clicks on the link, it opens in a new tab. So that's quite a cool thing to do as well. So that's just my normal sections that I've added. And then just a quick tip to show you is that in that, you'll see that here I've actually brought the extra. I like the idea of actually putting a little line in with a little star there. And the way that I did that was by going to, in that section, I physically just typed the little lines in. And then I got that little star by just using the Windows and the full stop on my machine. So pressing the Windows button on my keyboard, and the full stop brings this up, and I could just pick a little icon and it actually displays it. So pretty nifty, I'd say. And for you to then get the JSON for this to get you started, on my GitHub, I just want to navigate there. If you go to github.com, Tracy VD Scaife, and you go to the repositories, I've created a repository for SharePoint Online Configure List Form with JSON. And in there, I've got a little read file for you as well. And then there's 3 files that I've uploaded. And you can actually just download. This is a zip file. And then you'll have those little text files that you can copy and use for the JSON on your form. So there's the body, the footer, and the header. I've showed you the little pieces that I want you to change for your form. And you'll see that when you do make changes, if you know that something's wrong, so if I had to put in something else in there now, you'll see that it's saying that it's invalid, there's something wrong. So if you go preview first, you'll know if there's no error there that it can actually work. And then I do hope that you're going to have a lot of fun with this. I definitely did. So another thing to also know is that if this was a Microsoft list that comes from Teams, if I go back to Teams, you'll see, and I just need to find it. So there's the content scheduler that I created. And you'll see it actually applies the changes back to where you've added it in Teams as well. So there you can see it's got all the section in as well. And even that SharePoint custom list that I created, even though it wasn't created from Microsoft list side, even the custom list that I created and then added, if you just come and add it as a tab, so I just added it as a SharePoint URL that I put in, it does exactly the same. It also allows for that form editing to display inside of Teams. I hope you have loads of fun with it, and we'll catch up soon.